Great. Hello world, Podler team back at it again, doing more track 2 voicing, where we go over the various principles. Well, actually, yeah, all the principles and ideas and assertions that we have gathered so far. Those are all contained within the L1 through L10 material. But this one we're doing right now, theme section, is the About Yourself, which is the most customized of the sections. And normally that's going to be L10. We're making it L9 right now, so I have a little more time to get Mojo Journalism together. All right, so introductions. I am Nai G Coach. With me I have Nai G, Ben, and Glenn. Mitch will most likely be along soon. So let's go ahead and just get into it. And why don't you guys say where you're at, and we'll just play from there. Ben?
All right. So from last time, I had a bunch of big topics, and we ended up sort of talking about different aspects of some of them. I went ahead and I just added a bunch of bullet points under each topic, and I also added some topics and did some restructuring to kind of put it more in line with how I would deliver it. I still don't have it down to like the individual beats yet, but I could probably like take some of those bullet points and like make a beat out of like them. And I just have a better overall idea of like how I'm going to structure things and how I'd like to. And also I made sure that I addressed all of the, because you sent an email, Coach, where you basically laid out all the things you wanted our beats to address, like a big set of 10 questions we want like our beats to address. I also made sure that my that the topics I was covering would answer all those questions.
Excellent. Glenn, can you also do a little kind of just where you're at?
Yeah, for me, I have like about 10 beats or so that I remember off the top of my head that we discussed in the last Hangout, and now I'm just trying to go like Ben, I think. I'm trying to separate that major beat into 3 parts that I can then discuss more in depth. So like beats within beats, essentially, and then trying to figure out like whether or not I can maybe combine certain beats or maybe flesh certain ones out more, and just depending on, you know, what I feel as though is important to want to discuss and is important to want to know about me, and overall just trying to get a better understanding and a better idea of, you know, me and how I want this kind of like track to sort of like be, you know, broken down into. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So it sounds like Ben might have a little more to work with to start. So what I think we'll do is I'll kind of go back and forth between the two of you, but I'm going to start with Ben and kind of play with what he has, because that might give you ideas, Glenn, as we're talking, and then I'll move over to you. We'll kind of do the same process. Sound good? Okay, so let me start by saying I think that I want to add 2 more required beats.
Okay, sure.
And I think they are basically the starting and end point of your arc. The first beat is, and this will probably be the last one you do, it's often how it works, is going to be sort of like your blurb. So like each of this, imagine you're Sherlock Holmes. Okay, each of your beats is going to talk about something about the life of being Sherlock Holmes, how you operate, you know, major characters in your life, things, whatever, however you want to do that. But then if you were to first introduce the character, there should be a beat that basically hints, suggests, gives a little bit of what the arc's going to be. Kind of like, who's going, oh. Hello? Hello? Yep. Yep. Okay. Cool. I'm getting something delivered. All right, cool. So that first beat would basically try to give as much about you in a shorter space. So you'll do that, I think, at the end. Once you know what the arc is, then you'll know how to set the arc. So basically a intro beat that sets the arc. So, for example, it'll probably be your most used beat, actually, once you get there, because it's the beat that would make sense of the arc to come. And so you use it all the time. Oh, hey, I'm Ben. I do this thing with such and such. I like to do some programming, blah, blah. And it's like your first 3 to 5 sentences about you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Short introduction.
Exactly. And it'll be like a natural way of kind of introduce yourself while also kind of embedding some like keywords or key items that, you know, likely people ask you questions about, and you can go into your arc. Or if you just go into your arc, it's set up by, you already kind of said what kind of cat you are. You know what I mean? In a blurb. And so now you're sort of like expanding or explaining what you hinted at or gave a little intro on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm guessing there's going to be a conclusion too.
Yes. The conclusion, I think the best way to conceptualize that. So the way to conceptualize the first beat is basically like anytime you would see something for like a TV show where they're talking about a character or you know, whatever, a team or whatever, and they basically kind of like say what this character is going to be like. You see it for video games, you see it for any of them where they kind of like give you the gist of them in one paragraph, a single paragraph gist. Obviously in a big game, there's a lot of things to expand from there, but that gives you the flavor of it and hints at all the things that'll to come. Okay, so then what to riff on for the end of the arc beat, I think would be a mission statement. So you basically kind of like set the arc, talking about yourself and then whatever you feel is the best way to do that. And then once you've done that kind of initial of introducing yourself to that arc, you then a beat saying, and here's what I'm now intending to do. I think will give energy to your vlogs or, you know, YouTube channels or whatever you're doing, or just your own personal self-discovery. Is like, okay, now that I said what this character is, what's this character going to be doing? What can you expect from this character going forward? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really cool.
And that's what I noticed also from a lot of vloggers is you generally want to have like an introduction to you, and then also sort of like what it is that you can expect to see more of here and why. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think those 2 beats will actually come at the end. I just want you to account for them in your tally. So it'll be a dozen of required beats total. Mitchell, you came at the tail end of that is I was thinking that there's 2 more. No, it's fine. I'll give you the takeaway. There's going to be 2 more required beats for a total of 12. And they're actually probably going to be the last 2 beats you do after the arc has been made. And the first beat is going to be an introductory beat that sets up the arc. So kind of like if you're Sherlock Holmes, the arc is going to be all the most important things you need to know about that character, one, you know, in 5 different beats. But then the initial one is kind of like how you introduce someone to the character. Just give them a little bit of a teaser, an idea of what this person's like, a lot of flavor, and then that will be expanded on by the arc. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. Then the other one will be at the end of the arc, and that'll be riffing off of like basically a mission statement. So once you've kind of described your character, what you've been doing, what you're about in general, and what you believe in, and what's interesting and so forth, experiences you've had, however you want to do it. But then once that's done, that initial arc introduction of yourself, it ends with, and now here's what I plan to be doing. You know what I mean? And obviously, as you go through your life, you can change these things, of course, but it's good to have like a mission statement. Like I've introduced the character, and now this character is me going on. I plan to be going on these kinds of adventures, so come along with me.
So those are just 12 beats that are required of the 30 or so that we're going to be doing.
36 to 60.
36, 60.
So it sounds like you guys might go low, so it's called 36 is what you need to hit. So 1/3 of the minimum will be requirements. Okay, so can you give us, Ben and Glenn just went, can you give me a quick like sort of like status update of where you are? And whatever it is fine, just give me an idea of where you are with kind of building this story of you.
Sure. Well, I have some beats here. I have the ones we did last time, and I have few more that I didn't do, and I was just organizing them. There's a few that I didn't. Remember, you told us to get, I think, like attach like words to them. Like we attached like 5 or so words. I didn't do that for all of them, although I probably could do it pretty easily. And there's also just other stuff I have that's not even on this sheet that I probably could include.
Great. And I'll go around with you guys one more time then. Can you then each give me just an idea of roughly how many beat ideas you have?
Ideas.
Glenn, you said like 10, right? You have about 10 that you remember?
Let's see.
Oh yeah, I have about 10.
Other ones we haven't done yet?
Just total. Like I'm trying to get an idea of the beats that are make up your arc. I'm kind of trying to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I have like 10, but I know that several of them I can break up into multiple beats. So like some of them could probably be even like 3 or 4 beats, like if I really broke it down.
Okay, we'll talk about that then. So you have around 10 now too?
Yeah.
Okay, Mitchell?
Yep.
When you say beat, you mean like just ideas, or like these things are like fully developed?
No, just ideas. Just ideas.
And this includes even ones that I've already mentioned?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then quite a few. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. About 20 or so.
Okay. All right. So you're about 2/3 the way towards having the minimum. That's good. Okay. So then let me actually start with Ben, then go to you, Mitchell, and then you, Glenn, last. I think that might be the easiest way to build it out. Okay. So Ben, let's start with, you have around 10 beats. Can you kind of like rapid fire just say what those 10 are?
You're right. Okay, so they're more like overarching topics. I have like
Right.
several bullet points for each one, and some of these individual bullet points could be beats themselves. But yeah, so I have family, friends, gaming, YouTube, school, programming, sample surfer, places I've lived, typology, as well as challenges that I experienced when coming to Podlayer.
Okay. Good.
And then I also mentioned Podlayer several times, I think, throughout these other beats. So it covers the other topics for Podlayer as well.
Nice. Okay, so what I'm thinking is then when you do this kind of ritual, and I want you guys to do it, it works for you. So I'm going to try to tell you the sort of universal principles that one needs to kind of check off to do it successfully. You want to position yourself to have conversations you want to be having. So that's another way of thinking up some additional ideas, is so those things you have so far, and they're good, they're solid, and you can expect that some people will react to them and have inquiry. Is there, and you don't have to come up now, but just maybe from here, say next time, something to think on is starting to think of this Ben's conversation. As a vlogger, so forth, as a public, person, a public intellectual, you're going to have, like Dawkins, like Hitchens, for example, classic right there. They actually both share space as free thinkers, and they would be conceptualized that way, but they are not both known for relishing getting into the same subjects. There are several they have that overlap, right? But then there's other things they're known for, and that's because they have staked those out. Those are areas that interest them, that they would like to have dialogue, whether it be friendly, neutral, or even debate. But this is kind of like setting how you want the public to interact with you. Does that make sense?
Okay, interesting. So it's supposed to, because my take on it was that I wanted it to be as holistic as possible, while also doing it how I wanted to do it. So I started with the overall topics to basically make sure that I was being holistic. Because how I'd like to do it is get the holisticness, and then as I get into the actual beats, I'd probably like the way I would present it or the way I would phrase it would get into how I would want the conversation to be presented.
Good.
Were my initial thoughts on it. Although there are some high-level things, but I think that all of the things I have, I definitely want to talk about and get into. So.
Okay, cool. So I just share this with you is that myself, when I did mine, and I had difficulty in pulling that out of myself. One of the things that happened quite a bit is Nexi basically was trying to get me to introduce the things that are about myself that we talk about. Do you mean because the world doesn't tend to have the same conversation with you, but you do have a conversation with your unconscious genius that is quite enjoyable, and you can notice that rush whenever you're listening to certain videos, playing with certain things, doing a new programming thing that you really like, and you're getting that rush. So basically, you kind of thinking in a very inspiring way is you have total reign to basically outside those prereqs talk about things that you want to talk about, and basically by your public presence make them a conversation item. So that helps to help you.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah,
you.
I'm sure there's additional ideas I can come up with. Although I think a lot of it will probably be breaking these like big, juicy like topics up, because like these are really big. Like I can definitely say like several beats on many of these, which means that I'm probably actually pretty close to you know, at least most of the way there to 36. If I really break down what I already have, but I'll also think of some additional things probably. Like for example, I don't have anything on anime. I can almost certainly add that. So
nice. Yeah, for sure. I think anime would be one that comes up quite a lot when we talk. So it's something that definitely gives you pleasure. And if a person was into that and they communicate with you, besides being energizing, it's also going to show you off to a better light, because people who are into anime, when they hear you mentioning it, they're the ones that'll follow up. And that means that they're.
I can also talk about like music. That's another thing. I spend a lot of time listening to music. So.
It's good. Exactly. So I want you
there
guys.
There are different songs I like, you know. Right.
Yes, no, so. Totally. No, that's all good. How to make a character, because there's certain things we want to do to get the choreography down, but you really want to be your character. You know what I mean? To where it's doing things you want, and but then at the same time, we're also trying to put into a way that's been established by bards throughout history to make a character interesting, you know, punchy, engaging, easy to get into. Which I think
And another thing is like the bullet points I have for these are how these things like relate to me. So like I might like mention school or friends, but it's like what my experience was, you know, with those things. So it's kind of
good.
It's kind of I've sort of been thinking about this a lot in terms of like my like childhood arc, like until I got to Podlair, because I got to Podlair when I was 16. So like all the years before are like teenage and childhood. So it's kind of like I've been sort of thinking about that chronological arc and the various things I did leading up to it. But I also have some stuff on what I'm currently doing too, which is important.
Okay, so it sounds like you have a little idea that you might want to go with a bit of a chronological arc.
I'm not entirely sure if I'll order it that way or if I'll sequence it that way, but that was when I was planning it out. That's kind of how I planned it out, I guess.
I got you.
So.
Okay, so what I'd like to do then is to take one of your beats and play with it a little bit. Why don't you choose one of the beats that you would like to play with a bit?
Okay. Let's see. So, gaming would probably be pretty simple to play with because like an individual game could be a single beat, or I could group two games into one beat. It's like one game is like one like atomic thing. Like I wouldn't spend like 2 beats on one game probably. I mean, unless it was really big, like maybe RuneScape or something. So that would probably be a good one to play with. I could probably break that down because I have like 8 games listed there. So
Gotcha.
I'll probably want to decide on how many beats and also like how to structure like which which games I want to talk about, which beats. And I could probably also think about like themes, right? So
yes.
it's certain aspects and things I like that certain games have that others don't, right? And then that could relate back to my character. So it would be like
good.
So it would be like the games would be mentioned because they have this thing that I really like. So that's another way.
Exactly. You imagine like reading like a novel or seeing a show about a character, playing a game, whatever. You want each thing that's there, such as Sherlock Holmes playing the violin. That's interesting, and we could talk about where he learned it and what skills he has and what his favorite songs are. But the reason why that's usually mentioned in the Sherlock Holmes novels is to show that he uses art sometimes to distract his mind so that he can be a better detective.
Yeah.
So although
yeah.
at one point, so the author, Conan Doyle, is talking about Sherlock and is saying that he has these certain interests, but each interest has that double meaning of saying something about that character that you didn't know yet. So, like, if you do several video games, I think it'd be a cool way of doing it if that's one thing that moved you a lot growing up.
Yeah.
But that you want to think of what is each one going to say about them. So, how about you pick a game and we can try one?
Oh, so like right now? Okay, sure.
But right there, we're kind of deciding. Do you think that maybe you want to go with you think that several of your beats might be games?
I'm not sure how many will, but I think multiple probably will, because that was basically all I did for my, for my teenage years and childhood, leading up to Pod Lair.
Okay,
so.
I think what I'm hearing, but let me know if I'm off. I'm seeing a little reluctance to do that, and that's fine because it's saying what your mind wants to do. And I think you already kind of voiced it already. Perhaps for you, it would be more comfortable. A lot of people like to do it this way. I do myself a lot of times, trying to find the shortest, tightest arc to go from beginning to end and make a small, powerful arc, and then start dropping other.
I'm not really sure I'm uncomfortable with anything particular. I'm not exactly certain what you're interested in having me do, so that I guess could be a little bit uncomfortable. But that's just because I'm not exactly certain.
Okay. So
what I would be doing.
Okay, so it's good. So, and I apologize, I worded that incorrectly. So what I'm referring to is that there's going to be different facets to this process. Three I mentioned in particular are thinking up general ideas for beats, then what goes into them, the various breakdowns, and then how they link together in an overall arc. All those three things are happening simultaneously, but you tend to have to kind of play with one at a time and keep going back and forth between them as you build it out. So what I was trying to figure out, and I think that's
so it's like drawing lines and connections between them and sort of building an arc within that structure for gaming, or should I connect it to other? And of course I'll probably want to connect it to other things as well, so I can integrate it with the greater arc. And I already know how to do this, right? And that's why I'm talking about game. I'm not just talking about because I spent so much time doing it. I'm talking about because of the way the impact that had in my story, the meaningful impact on my story that led me to Pod Lair and programming. So
this is great.
Yeah.
So what I was referring to was actually the process in general, kind of these three different ways when they're taking what's inside themselves as a bard and then trying to put it out. There's kind of three things you're doing. What am I going to talk about? What's involved in that? So picking the topic idea, bullet points for that, and then how would I link that together in a monologue? So those three things are happening. And so what I was asking with you is what might feel the most sure for you. So there's kind of three choices. We can see if there's some more ideas that you might want to think of. We can see if you would take one of these ideas and start working it into like an outline with bullet points. Or would you like to actually see if we could, kind of choose your own adventure, Ben. Option 3, we could actually try and make a small arc out of the 10 you have now or more, and then that would be any of those three will be a flag forward. Figuring out the arc,
I kind of like the arc idea.
Okay.
Because I've been kind of going like high level to low level so far. That kind of feels like the next logical step.
That's fine, and it's cool to jump around too. So whatever we're going to start with, guys, it's fine. And we're going to jump around a lot between these three to make progress. This is how creative writing is done in general. But particularly when you're trying to tell a story that's going to have meaning. All right, so let's then go with the arc. So we know we're going to have the beginning and end. It's going to be an intro and a mission statement. All right. So now the arc itself. I thought I heard you say.
Would you like me to go more in detail on my beats? Because I mostly just said like the title. I haven't really said much about what I'll be talking about.
That would take us in the direction of starting to fill them out some. So we can do that, or we could, you could try and take the 10 you have.
Okay.
This is the arc thing you asked about, but we don't have to do this. But if we do, trying to take those 10 you have and see what order you're thinking about putting.
Oh yeah, I like that. I like
okay,
that.
let's do that, and then I'll move over to Mitchell. But this will be a good thing forward. So these 10 you have, do you have some kind of chronology associated with them, or?
A chronology like within them. Like when I talk about my like the friends I've had in the past, chronology of like I had these friends at this time, and you know these are things we did and so forth. You know, and then I'll talk about friends I had later in my life, and then eventually friends I had in Michigan, and then Pod Lair. And then with gaming, again, there's a chronology to it. I'd probably want to talk about, you know, some of the first games I played, you know, when I was like youngest, and then sort of move up, you know, chronologically the story of that leading up to where I am now in Pod Lair. And yeah, so I'm thinking have a chronology to them. Others might not be so chronological, like when I talk about programming in the sample surfer, that's more like status quo-ish. But I could make a chronology within the beats and say like,
1 second.
Oh yeah.
Hello? Hello? Okay, I'll be down. I have to go get something. All right, so Ben, while I'm gone, I've got just a couple minutes. If you could see if you have an order with the 10 you have now.
Sure, I can come up with an order, I guess.
Yeah, and then we'll play with that, see if anything else teases out, and then I'll move over to Mitchell.
Sure thing.
I wonder what he's getting.
No idea.
Just alive. So you can see us speculating. Wanted to.
Nice. I felt I just sequenced them really quickly, and I felt like I have a much better understanding of what I'm really doing after sequence. Because I feel like I have a better understanding of like the story I'm telling.
Yes.
Because when they're more jumbled up, like, because I know I want to talk about these things, but like, and I have some ideas about the connections, and like I could make in telling a story, but like really like figuring out exactly. I mean, and this might not be exactly how I do it, but really getting an understanding of a good sequence for them sort of helps you build up a story for the whole thing.
Definitely.
And it makes for good transitioning too, because like oftentimes, you know, I might be thinking, oh, I want to talk about this beat, but I don't necessarily know like where to put it. Like how am I gonna where is it gonna come from, and like where is it gonna lead to? You know what I mean? So I feel like I have a decent layout now.
Excellent. And I think you just said about the seeing where it's coming into it and where it's leaving. Often because of that, it makes the individual beat itself richer. By knowing that it's going to be handed off from some other thing and given over to another thing in the story, you have to add another layer to the beat itself. Even if when you gave it by itself, people didn't know that, it still will be a better beat because it's part of a story that connects.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I'd like to talk about, I guess, how I've
please
ordered things. So the first one that I have, or that I decided on real quick, was to start out with family, because it's you know, it's the first thing that I can really remember out of these. It's very shiny babyish, because, you know, I've always, you know, as far back as I can remember, I've always had my family, so it's a good place to start, I think, because like I've played different games, had different friends, whatever, but as far as I can remember, I've always had my family, so I think that's a good place to start. And then the second one is the places I've lived. That kind of gets into, you know, when I was 8 years old, I moved first 8 years of my life, I lived in Arizona, right? And then it kind of builds a structure of my life in terms of location, which is helpful to set early on. And it's good to branch off from family because, you know, me and my family, we moved, you know, we lived in Arizona for 8 years, and then we moved to Minnesota, and then we moved to Michigan. And then it also transitions well into my next beat, which is the friends that I've had living often in different places. So back in Arizona, I had these friends. When I was in Minnesota, I had these friends. When I was in Michigan, and here these friends, and Hot Lair and so forth. And then after that, I decided to talk about school. And that's kind of like adding another layer to that. So family, places I've lived, things like that. This kind of adds another layer to what my experience was like the schools I went to, and also what my experience going to school was like, living in different places, but also just in general too. It's more of a general beat, but it also kind of is something that I could apply to specific points in my past, like different, because I ended up having to change schools, and that is kind of related to friends in different ways. And then I figured I'd talk about what I did after school, which was gaming. So I have that there, and also it relates to friends as well. So it's not like right after friends, but it's close by, so I could reference back to that pretty quickly and easily. Because oftentimes what I did with my friends was play games. So and then after that, I talk about YouTube, which branches off from games because a lot of the things I was interested on YouTube were gaming related. So I think it's a good thing to talk about after that. And then I talk about programming. That kind of relates more to gaming, but also YouTube, because I was interested in different. I was kind of interested in hacking different games, and there's a lot of tutorials and different people doing different things. So as far as like my virtual village of people using different technologies to do cool different things in games, YouTube was a big thing for me. And it's also close by to gaming, which is good. And then programming transitions into Sample Surfer, which I think a logical place for it, because then I've already talked about my interest in programming, then I can talk about the Sample Surfer, and that works well with the chronology as well. And then I talk about, as I talk about the Sample Surfer, kind of getting closer and closer to really getting a lot into what I'm doing now with PodLayer in the chronology, and also with the related work that I'm doing. So then I talk about typology, which gets into how I got into PodLayer. And then I talk about the challenges that I faced as I got into PodLayer.
And then the gains, because there's a challenges based beat, the requirements, and there's also a gains that you got from it.
Yeah, I do talk about gains a little bit here. I could probably flesh out entire beats about that though.
But as far as like I was trying,
because I did yeah, because like in typology I have like some bullet points that kind of shows like the advantages this had for me over like something like typology. And then with the Sample Surfer, I talk about like I got a huge amount of energy from doing that. So that was like one of the major gains I made working on that project. So I think though I can probably make a full beat on that. It probably would be worthwhile, I think, to have like, because I think that would be a good, because I think you're right, that would be a good thing to talk about after challenges or before, either way. Probably after, I'd say.
Yeah, and then in my understanding, that would be the end of the arc, because that would flow nice into then your mission statement at the end. Is that?
Yeah, that would be, yep. And I can add things in between and so forth. But as a general arc, I think that looks really good.
Okay, excellent. So then that's good. For next time, what I want you to kind of focus on, you can start thinking about now, is two things. One, that each of these beats in the arc, you want to tell them about you, but you want to be a story of you, the character, rather than just a biography. And just to know, everything you did so far sounded great. So I'm not saying that you were doing that. I was just saying, as far as when you start envisioning how you're going to fill these beats out, when you say, for example, like, talk with your friends, you want to mention there's something about you and the concept of friendship in general, or just how friendship.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's
I definitely want to do that.
And you can do it for all of them like that, where you're talking about the hacking, the programming, but then say something about you that made the hacking of the games jump out, because that says something about your character, but they may not get that. So you do want to actually state, kind of like, and I did this, but I think, I'd say something about the kind of mental process.
Yeah. So as I'm doing it, sort of talk about what it did to my character, I suppose.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Oh yeah, definitely. I'm gonna do that throughout for sure.
Perfect. Okay, so then the other thing is now basically say next time, either later this session now or next time, whenever. I don't know how this will work for you, but the next thing I think you want to do to kind of get the arc tightened is see if you could like talk us through your arc, because you see, like here you kind of gave like a rough conceptual outline. And you were kind of like saying, here, I'll probably do this, this, this. Is see if you can kind of plug in a bit just what beats you think you might be doing. Does that make sense?
Sure thing.
And then as a part of that, it sounds like you have around 10, 12 beats now. You need 36, so that might give you an idea. See if you can't, see if you can't tease it out to like 20 beats. Yeah, see if you can't tease your beat.
Yeah, for sure. I can do that.
and then if you can do that, then see if you can get that'd be nice. That'd be nice. Works that way nicely. You sound like you have roughly a dozen now. Next step would be tease it to 24, and then after that tease it to 36. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Okay,
I can definitely do that.
Mitchell, so I come back over to you, and I kind of say the same thing. Is we can come at different ways. We can work with the arc, we can work with ideas for beats, and then we could work with breaking a beat down into its bullet points and how it would actually work.
All right, so one of those three things.
And then go from there.
All right. Well, yeah, the arc's interesting for mine because a lot of my beats I've found, and in fact, it's kind of one of the things I've been thinking about, is a lot of them are like constellations of my interests, like really just like that's like the overwhelming probably majority of them right now. So I was wondering because like I didn't put as much stuff in there, although I'm thinking of doing so, about like, you know, maybe my friends or music that I like or something like that.
Okay, this is good. So yeah, so there's lots of ways to do an arc. They're all customized, obviously, for how you're doing it. Some classic ones are, you know, chronological. Another one is going in degrees of intimacy or controversialness. You know, you start with beats that are less so, and then you go into deep, heavier stuff. So basically chronological or light to heavy. Another one that I think might apply to you, Mitchell, which is quite popular, is basically sort of making a platform, making a political or philosophical platform.
Yeah, I was thinking of probably organizing a little bit that way and maybe adding a little bit of the controversiality as well. Maybe a little bit of a mix of those.
Gotcha.
Well, maybe that would just lend itself to that anyway.
Okay, cool. So in that case, Mitchell, the way if we want to work with the arc, probably the way to do it is the way that you've seen most, you know, philosophy books written, which is that you start with concepts that you can explain easier without having other things mentioned yet. And then concepts or ideas that kind of like play off of other ones you would bring in later.
Yeah, that kind of gives me some cool ideas. Like maybe like I could start out with some more personal life stuff, and then that could maybe help transition into maybe why I even have these interests. And then obviously I do for a reason. And then get into those, and then, you know, eventually where they're at now and where they're actually like pushing limits.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, do you think you want to try like roughly assembling a very loose arc? Or is that still forming a bit? Do you want to talk a bit more?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I might want to think about it more before I arc it.
Okay, so then let's try to pull back in this process, because there's like a way to kind of find our way forward. So let's pull back here a little bit. And what you would do is just sort of look at what's on that paper and what's in your head, and kind of just see where your interest drifts. And you don't have things right now. You can maybe do it while I'm doing Glenn's turn. We can come back to you, whatever, or maybe feel it now. But kind of see where, because you kind of see what we're doing. We're doing three kinds of builds: the arc, ideas for the beats, and then bullet points for the beats. Is there something you feel like talking about this process, the making of your story? I can offer something for you. Just you can do what you want with this. I'll just mention it. When observing you in this process, I noted that you showed the most interest when we were talking about the various sort of areas of interest, philosophical areas of interest. We don't have to tackle the whole arc. Perhaps we could just tackle part of an arc. It sounded like your latter part of your arc was going to be getting into the ideas you're into.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you want to play with that area? Because that was the one that you kind of seemed the most keen on from what we've seen so far.
Okay, we can probably do some of that.
I don't lead you at all. I just
no, I know. I mean, I don't take it that way. I'm trying to decide what to do. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see how organized that. So there's obviously some of them that are a little more like applied, like we were talking about artificial intelligence a lot, and then some of them that are more like out there, like building like a philosophy of science theory, and the hard problem of consciousness and stuff like that. They're not as like I have a use for this, but just things I'm interested in. And yeah, I guess some of those ones too might almost seem a little bit harder to connect to
Although I was thinking a little
odd layer, but they do relate, I guess, just to like seekerness in general.
Oh yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
To me, the connection seemed pretty strong. I was actually seeing it kind of already. In fact, I was seeing also those things you're talking about. It also kind of begged the question of how did Mitchell get to pondering such deep things? You know what I mean? Almost kind of hints at the earlier part of the arc that'll lead.
Yeah, I was thinking about like, so like which one would I want to do first? And like I wasn't sure. I'm thinking that maybe, 'cause I'm imagining this arc going out just like very vaguely, like so there's like the more like just starting out like introducing me and who I am and how I became the person I am. Then we'll get into maybe lower like big ideas I'm interested in, and then actually getting into more like specific applied stuff near the end.
That'd be good.
I think that makes more sense.
So that you've kind of broken your arc up into like
That actually that even dovetails a little bit into like mission and stuff like that. So
it would.
sense.
So am I saying? So you're thinking about you're having your arc having 3 segments, like a sort of like.
Yeah, I almost imagine it like a diamond shape, like it kind of like explodes out and then like comes back in.
Okay, that's good. So this is great progress here. This is high level conceptualization. Is there an area of that of those segments that you feel you could maybe fill out easier, or is calling to you more?
Probably the middle area is probably the easiest one. There's just a lot of space there, I guess, literally. Whereas, like, I'm not really sure exactly what I want to say yet about the more specific applied stuff. I'm not sure exactly what I want to say on my personal life.
Okay.
I definitely do want to do both those things for sure. But
That's good. Okay, so you're thinking to the middle section. If you can do that, it'll actually kind of tell you where you're going to at the beginning. You're trying to get to that middle from the beginning, and then the middle also then takes you to the end. Okay. What beats are you thinking about putting in that middle segment?
yeah, okay. So let's see. Well, one I already mentioned, I guess, just like kind of the introduction to the whole thing was just philosophy of science and stuff like that. I'm trying to and trying to create a grand unified sort of theory of nature. That's one that goes there. That's probably like maybe the central one. But maybe not. I don't know. And like consciousness and life and what are those things? That's one that would go there. Maybe stuff about probably like language and math would go in there. Those are big ideas. Not super applied, although language starts getting a little more into the applied, I think. As far as what I care about it. Although, I don't know. It's also relates to my personal life. There's a lot of breaking down that can be done of all those things I just said. Like those aren't 4 beats. That's probably more than that. Another beat that I've been thinking about, and maybe it could go here, although it probably relates a little more to the personal life aspect, so maybe it'd be like kind of a transition. But it's just something I've been thinking about lately. It's like the disconnect between my scientific interests, philosophical interests, in my daily life. Like that's like a very like acute thing for me, and like relating it to people and trying to get them interested in it, even no matter how like I'm really passionate about those things, obviously, and that can really bring people in. And then sometimes it could almost be like does this even go here? Is this, like does it even, like where is it? Where can you fit this? Where can you fit this into people's lives? So that's something I might talk about there.
And this is great stuff, Colin. So if you have paper there, do jot this down.
I do. Yeah, I'm going off my paper. I'm kind of organizing it. It's really haphazard right now. I think next time, probably what I'll try to do is like my homework time. I think I'll just like I have this whole thing. And it's just like just lots of beats without really an ordered. But
just scribblings on a sheet. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like that, honestly. But
a lot of genius starts that way. A lot of genius starts that way.
Yeah. And then we'll make it maybe a cleaner sheet for next time from this one.
That's good.
So that it will be, and I'll arc it deliberately, or at least cluster it, maybe instead of arc it at least. So like start getting that kind of structure in there.
Good. Okay, is that a good place to kind of mull for a moment?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, then I'm moving over to Glenn.
Sure.
All right.
All right, Glenn, so same thing to you. We can work with any part of the building process, the arc, ideas for beats, or breaking a beat down into its points.
Okay, so I took those 10 beats, or I think it may be, no, I think they're about 10. And I went ahead and I wrote down a few sentences for like the sub beats of the beats that I have, in order to kind of like flesh them out a little bit. And yeah, I just kind of have some stuff written down now.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Should I share that, or
Sure,
perhaps?
but that's where you're already kind of headed. So this sounds like you're working on the arc then a bit, or more like a list of the ideas. Is that what you're working on? More a list of the ideas?
Kind of. When you yeah, it's kind of like more of a list of ideas. But when you say arc, does that mean like how you want to, in what sequence you want to break it down?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I was thinking I would probably go in a more chronological kind of storyline kind of way. Is that? I think that's good, right?
Yeah, that works fine. So do you have an idea of like how you're going to still start out with earliest stuff, and then are you going to
do the more later stuff? Yeah, I think.
Okay, so but okay, can you give me like just a very rough walk through of kind of what you're imagining that being?
Okay, so I think I might add a few beats in as well. Ben gave the idea of like family life and stuff like that. I might put that in there as maybe the first beat or so, talking about like my early, like when I was a kid, when I was a youngster, if you will, and school, like kindergarten, going through middle school, or elementary school, and then high school, and then college. So that's like one way to break down time in a chronological way. But at the same time, there's also like my thought process as I was going through those, as I was maturing into to who I am now. And so like what I kind of wanted and what I was pursuing in life. So like I always think that like the desire for like progression was always at the very root of it, and that can be defined as like trying to understand the world, trying to understand the meaning of existence or whatever. But really, I kind of like the way of describing it as like trying to find progression, trying to always make some kind of like progress in one's life, like that. And then I was exposed to TV. I was exposed to anime. I was exposed to all these kinds of like games and stuff, and that was kind of like an outlet for me. And then I can also talk about somewhere in there, I guess, like there's just like topics as well, just sort of like my location, my culture. I moved a little bit too. I took that idea from Ben too, because I kind of liked it, because I moved quite a bit as well. So I can talk about like you know, periods of my life where, you know, we moved from one place to another, and the kind of experience that was like, and, you know, how that affected me, and what I, you know, the kind of things and the kind of activities that I did when I went to those different places, and the kind of things that changed, the kind of things that kind of basically always stayed the same. Then there's also somewhere in there I can throw in my hobbies and stuff. Like I have a, you know, like I'm interested in fitness. I'm interested in nutrition. I like to spend my time studying, researching kind of stuff that I'm interested in. Also, I guess you could say, you know, veganism is like one aspect of the nutrition side, but it's also kind of its own thing. I can talk about the story of how I became vegan, difficulties, challenges I experienced, future plans that I have. Gaming, anime, movies. I think I touched on that. Location, school life, the DNA and Mojo phenomenon. Trying to find a connection between the two, the kind of implications that would have. It would also allow for a lot of bonuses as far as purifications, more effective purifications, and I think that it would actually even become the gold standard as far as like being that kind of like, you know, because it's kind of like the most solid evidence that we can possibly, I think, attain at this point, beyond just, you know, like Mojo reading and beyond just reading as far as like with the AI and stuff like that. Oh, that's gonna obviously, it's all gonna be like different perspectives, but they're all gonna be seeing the same phenomenon. One's looking at it from like a subatomic level, one's looking at it from this level, you know, from the macro level, and one's looking at it from more of a micro level, you know. And then I can also talk about how I went about, you know, trying to understand my own psychology. So that started off with typology, and then that eventually led into Podlair, and then it's just evolved from there on. It was always in the pursuit of wanting to try and understand myself better, and then in the pursuit of trying to understand myself better, I got what I wished for essentially, and then the answers weren't always what I wanted them to be, but nonetheless they were enlightening, and they helped me to steer in the direction that I want. That was in a more realistic direction. So I was always constantly progressing as like my understanding of myself. It allowed me to understand not only myself and much better, but also allowed me to start to begin to figure out what my place in the world is, and then also the other people in the world and how they fit into my life, and understanding them better, given where they're coming from and given what kind of a cognitive configuration they have. Yeah, I mean, I think that covers quite a bit of ground there. It's kind of all over the place a little bit, but there's...
I got general arc from it, so then it sounds like then you'll kind of, am I getting this correctly, it'll kind of culminate with sort of like your most current headspace, and then that will then go to the mission statement, right? So it'll lead up to latest Glenn's thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. And then the mission statement, when you say that, what does that mean exactly? Like, what should that be?
That should basically be a single beat where you kind of like talk about what people can probably expect from your character, what your plans are, your aspirations, you know, what you are thinking about doing with your voicing, what you're thinking about doing with your career, and basically kind of like, you know, keep an eye on me, world, I'll be doing some stuff. You know what I mean? And also kind of like a blogger, if you're like blogging, or, for example, like say YouTubing, it also lets people know, like, if you follow me, I'll be doing these kind of adventures. So I'm kind of like, this is what I've been doing, this is where I am now, and it ends with, and here's where I'll be going.
Okay, so this is what I've been doing. This is what I'm doing now. And this is what I'm going to be doing in the future.
Well, basically, yeah. Basically, the first beat, the intro beat, is basically like, let me tell you about this cool character. He does this, 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 and this. He's really, really cool, right? Simple beat, and that sets up your whole arc. And that arc is to describe you in the way you feel is good for you. And then once that description is done, and that's what I was asking you, it sounds like your description is going to kind of culminate with where you are today. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then that would take you up to current, and that makes sense. Then the last few would just be okay, and then I'll be, heading this direction.
All right. Okay then. Anything? Okay. All right.
Yeah, that sounded good. That sounds like a good way to do the arc, kind of going. But you said it's good. The progression theme. This is high level stuff. Is trying to figure out what is going to give the arc its shape. And I think all three of you got a good idea of that today.
Yeah,
and now
it's shaping up more and more as well as I think more about it, and then think about like interesting things that I think would be beneficial for other people to know about me, and that sort of thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's really good progress. I don't really have anything else for us, so I would kind of turn the floor over to you. We can, call it for today if we don't have anything else to say. If you guys have any questions, or if you want to talk about each other's arcs or anything back and forth, we have time to spare. If not, I also have some things I could just kind of throw at you of like, ideas of things to consider.
Sure.
Whatever you want to do.
I'm open to any of that, really.
Sure, me too.
Okay.
Yes, I'm guessing Mitchell's open too, because usually he's open. It's.
Okay. Well, two kind of tracks we can go on. One is just some general things that might be ideas for you to think on, and the other is responses or inquiry on what each other have said. Because having friends ask you about your story is a great way to kind of get you into, let me tell you about, you know what I mean? It's a great way to figure out what you want to do because there's a person there that you would want to share with. So I'll hand that over to you guys in a second. I'll just throw out these real fast. A lot of times things people want to know about a person, especially a public figure, a public intellectual, so to speak, as you guys are all going to be, is maybe your positions on certain things, political things, philosophical things, moral things. So that's just kind of a general one I throw out there, like, what's your take on love, what's your take on purpose in life, what's your take on political leanings, just some, and I throw it out there in case you have any trouble maybe getting to the 36 beats. Is that something to think of? Is just anything that, for example, yourselves, if there's a person that you find interesting, intellectual like Dawkins, or a vlogger like Shoe on Head or whatever, is what are some things that you would like to know their opinion on, right? I'm just making this up, but so you can also kind of think on what are some things that are going on, either historically they've always been hot topics, such as are you atheist? There's one, because none of you guys mentioned your view on that, but that actually is, if someone was to know about you three, actually me too, that would be a significant thing. We are all very scientific minded in general, although we have our own takes on that. So that might be something to throw in there in some way. Maybe it comes out in other ways, like the gaming or the DNA, or talking about the philosophical stuff that Mitchell mentioned, logic and other things like that. It may just come at you there, but that is something that I know myself. When I meet a new person and I think they're interesting, I do start wondering. I wonder what their take is on men, women. I wonder what their take is on evidence. You know what I mean? Are they faith-based people? Like, there's some general questions that people might want to know. If you kind of think that you may pepper that in there somewhere. So there's just some ideas, but I'll throw it over to you guys now. Is there anything you have questions for me, or stuff about each other's things?
I'm thinking about some of the things I'd like to do in the future, because I've been like working on the sample surfer like really hard for like the past year, and I feel like I'm at a point where we're at a point like where the thing is like, I mean, like the amount of things I've done is like enormous. Like I like we have like a kick-ass program. It's really efficient. It's fast, and we have like the website, and like that's not even something we've really got much into yet. That's just like there for like when we get like traffic, like that'll be there. Like we'll have a rating system, a comment system, like already, right? So I'm thinking about like some of the other things. I'm going to be doing in life. And the two that stand out to me as like areas I really like to get into are developing video games, which I'm of course going to do with the sample surfer. But also I may do some other stuff too. Like I might make like an MMO or something eventually. I have no idea, but that's like, you know. And then also artificial intelligence. I'm interested in more like the application of what we could potentially do with it. I'd like to study it and see if we can get an AI connected to our database and start like crunching numbers and figuring out perhaps, for example, what samples a person would be suited to reading. For example, with the sample surfer. And there's some other applications as well that would be interesting to look into, for example, such as the ability for an AI to analyze images. And, you know, I was mentioning like last Hangout, the ability like for an AI to analyze images and correctly guess a person's mojo. I'm not exactly sure how high that would be, but it would be really cool to look into. Yeah, so yeah, for me, those are like the three big ideas I'm thinking about. The first one, like as far as like chronology, is going to be the sample surfer. I'm going to keep maintaining and updating that, improving that, and the website throughout my life probably. And then the second will probably be gaming. We're kind of starting to sort of, you know, that's definitely like the next thing. And then after that is
Awesome.
I think I might be interested in AI. Like I might branch out more into that. But it's going to kind of get shuffled around. Like I might start saying like artificial intelligence this summer. You know, I might you know, come back to the later in life and work, you know, develop like a new improved like version of the sample surfer, you know, that has
Very
like
cool.
online multiplayer or something, you know. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a lot of ideas, the sample server of like, you know, how to make a survey and then a game and do different things. And so, yeah, I'm sure right now I'm focused on getting to data bedrock and using what you've done already with the program to help me do that. But once I feel more of a control on it as far as the purity, then I want to think of a lot of ideas of how to make it more interactive with people.
Yeah, and there's some advances in technology like right now that are like really powerful. Like with gaming, there's so many like tools out there and like frameworks you can use. So it's become much more accessible to make games than it used to be. And another aspect to that too is like is gaming like itself, developing games. It has like three like major pillars to that as well. Like that has, I mean, there's programming involved, but then there's also sound design and graphical design, which I'm not skilled on, but I could, it'd be interesting. I could probably get some basic skills in those areas. And that would definitely help out a lot.
Nice.
So
It,
I'm curious about your guys' different ideas you might have for, I don't know, I guess your mission statement or.
Some of the different things you want to do.
Yeah. Also, I think something that Ben kind of brought up in a way is sort of talking about what you want to do after you've kind of done your L9 or moving on, because you still have L11 through 20 to do with whatever content you find interesting. So, knowing what, so kind of dreaming about what those might be might help you figure out the starter package. That's a good point.
I kind of see it like maybe we can just keep going more and more deeper into the things that we find interesting, given the topics that we've already kind of chosen, and just kind of like fleshing them out that much further with like their own kind of like segment or their own kind of like area. And then maybe that could even lead into like new vistas of ideas that can be delved into. Yeah, because I mean, like we all have like very vast amounts of perspectives and ideas on things, right? So like, how do you like what makes these all important? Why are they trying to like really understand like, you know, your perspective on like what it is that you find interesting about them, and why they're important to you, and why you want to share them with the rest of the people, and what does that say about you and how you work and what you do and what you like, and that sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, like, I remember, Mitchell, I think you mentioned that it's important for people to kind of like understand about you that you're not someone who, like, I think is, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not 100% sure I remember this exactly, but I think, like, paraphrasing, like, I think I remember you saying something like you couldn't get involved in any sort of like a relationship with another person, friend or whatever, if that person is like they're not similar minded to you. I think atheism was kind of like one of the kind of ways in which we were trying to like go about that. Like, if the person was someone who's like a Christian, or they believed in God, and that sort of like raised a red flag or whatever. I'm not saying that they can't be like a podler Christian or whatever, but it's sort of like not necessarily even focused on just like them being religious in the sense of being a Christian, but it's sort of like they're someone that is religious in some kind of a way. They have a belief in some kind of like a like some kind of like a being or something like that. That would make it hard for you to kind of like get to know that person or connect with that person, because that's always going to be something that's going to be there as sort of like an issue in a way, right? So when you kind of make these things known about yourself, you're kind of already saying to the rest of the world, like, this is what I think, and if you don't think in the same kind of a way, then that means that we may not necessarily be able to get along as well as like if somebody were, I don't know, more like-minded to me. Like, and that's just sort of something that sounds kind of like harsh and sad in a way, but it's kind of like it happens, right? I mean, like, you can't get along with every single person, although the desire is always to want to be that way. But it's sort of like if someone is diametrically opposed to you in a certain sense, it does create a bit of a rift in that kind of an area, right? Although you can still talk about the topics, but it's still kind of like, I know it makes for an interesting dynamic. I don't even know why I brought that up, but it's sort of like
it's a very interesting point. Because I think you need. I'm curious what Mitchell was saying. This, I think there's a balance between the two. One is that being around those who have similar core values and beliefs to you, that's necessary. You need that to sustain yourself and to have a sense of conduciveness in the world. On the other hand, there needs to be, I think, an elevation of certain like seeker principles, and that if a person is doing these things, that gets a certain amount of admiration, respect that can lead to friendship, even if you don't agree on certain things. So I use an example of this is that Jordan Peterson is Christian, but he's a very smart person, and as important or even more important is that the way he comes about doing things is he uses evidence in general, and he is trying to get smarter. He's trying to get better, and he wants good for as many people as possible. That you can tell that in how he is doing things, and he is willing to learn. Now, that said, he's Christian, so obviously we wouldn't agree on that. But I would much rather have a friend like that, a Christian who's actually a seeker, than I've seen some people whose like say views are more mirrored to mine, but I don't like the way they conduct themselves. They don't respect, to me, like the way a seeker is supposed to go about doing something. You know what I mean? So a person could actually like agree separation of church and state and a few other things. Like, we agree on the ideas, but I still don't quite approve of how you conduct yourself as a seeker, as a hero in an adventure. Where on the other hand, it's like, well, Mr. Peterson, I got to tell you, as a friend, say we're friends, like as a friend, I that's not my deal. I actually don't know why you're thinking that, seeing as you're so smart in these areas. To me, it doesn't seem like it's very smart. I see it as something that's kind of like dead weight on you. He's like, well, no, I think this, and this. I'm like, all right, you've clearly looked into this, and we can continue to talk about it. But I could be friends with someone that we actually disagree on some fundamental things, but
They're likable in a way.
well, likable and also workable in that, for example, his view on religion, from what I've understood so far, I need to research more on him, but it's sort of like it gives your life meaning and purpose, and I think he may go a little overboard a bit with that, but there is truth to that. And he's going with everyone should have their own religion, not bother each other. So he has, a lot of Christians, this is key, because not every Christian is the same. As a Christian, he has a rather laissez-faire attitude about how you do spirituality. A lot of Christians don't, as we all, a lot of monotheists do not have a hands-off approach. So he actually has a get smarter yourself, try to do the most good you can, respect evidence and data and reasoning, and other than that, let people be. Do you know what I mean? And so there are people that I actually agree with more ideas with, but maybe they wouldn't be willing to do that as much. So I think. But both are important, you know what I mean? Respect for just how a person conducts themselves as a seeker, and that we agree on seeker ideas, because I don't think you never have maximum of both, you know what I mean? I don't think that comes that way. That person would literally be you.
Yeah, and then if that person's already you, then it's sort of like, well, you already know everything about yourself, and so that's kind of like,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mitchell?
My thoughts on that topic. Well, as it relates to me, because Glenn said some things I think he thought about me. Yeah, I don't know that I could really come up with like. I'm pretty open-minded. I don't think I come up with like one like super deal breaker idea, even if someone like believed in a being or something like that. I couldn't connect with it, but yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, it's funny that you mentioned Jordan Peterson, because he even talks about this. Is that some sameness in relationships is obviously a good thing. It's just leads to compatibility. So yeah, obviously we look people who mirror us in some ways. But also one of the points, as we've seen, of inspirational relationships, for example, is that they force you to go out of your comfort zone in certain ways.
Yep, true.
So yeah, I would consider myself pretty open-minded in that regard, as far as who I'd be interested in. Obviously, I'm sure there's some people that would, for whatever reason, draw me more than others.
Yeah, actually, what you said there, coming since you brought up like your other next account, just gave me a thing right there, because you were saying open-minded, but there's something implied that I have as well. I think we all do. It's sort of like the nigh side of it, and they do go together. You want to be very open-minded with extremely high standards, and I think that's the balance, to where I'm open-minded in the kind of seekers I will hang out with. I would like to say that there's almost no variety of seeker I can't find a way to hang out with, if you're not low level and sucky. You know what I mean? Yeah, because like myself, if someone actually brings something to the table, but you're like, okay, you put some thought in this and you care and so forth. I get it, even though I don't agree. It's like, okay, I wouldn't want to actually like rule that person out of my life. On the other hand, like we think alike, well, except the part that you like are lazy and cowardly and you lie and you do anything to win an argument, and I'm like, I don't if we agreed on all the things, I don't operate that way. Yes, the specifics, being open-minded, but operating sort of character, having a very high standard for that. I think that's a good way to get the best of both worlds. How about you guys? When I actually engage, like even like on debating people in life or just discussing things get intense, I can take really almost any position. I mean, as far as like being able to like say, okay, this conversation is worth having, except that they're just like lazy or they're not really working to have, you know what I mean, a relationship. Some people actually don't actually like bring their part to the table. So if someone does bring like, you know what I mean, like an actual, equal side to a relationship, then I'd like to think that, like myself anyway, and, it sounds like you guys are too, that I'm, open to all kinds of people sitting down at my table, as long as they have some good, secret work ethic.
Yeah. That's what I would put it.
Yeah, because I've actually had debates that have lasted like all day with people. Some of them are friends I had, and I'm like, that was a good day spent. I didn't mind doing that, but like, talk about it. You ever get like a debate and you're actually like building the other person's argument for them? It's like, okay, this is too much work. I can't do two people's job. Because that's like if you're like debating,
and then they tell you that's not their argument, even though they because they were so poor at constructing it, and like you had to in some way like construct it for them. They're like, oh, but like this tiny relevant detail, you didn't talk about this about my position, but it's not relevant. I understand like what you're trying to make. It's just you're not.
And it can happen. It can cross over either way, because I've seen like debates, and you'll see like sometimes one people on one side and another, and then sometimes it's just one person each. Other times they'll do two or three. Is also common panels.
Mm-hmm.
And like like obviously the three people on the one panel, I would assume that they share a lot of ideological space, but like sometimes they won't like debate well together, because like one person, like, I don't know, they have rage issues, or they don't use logic, or they are insulting, or whatever it is they're doing. You're like, dude, you're not actually helping. I know, like, I think Hitchens was known for that, among others, where even people who were like ideologically on the same side as him, still he was quite picky he would share a stage with. In general, he would prefer just to be by himself, unless he's getting Dawkins, you know what I mean, or Ayaan Hirsi Ali, or something. Like, okay, well, that's different. I'm sorry, I babbled on there.
Good.
So that was a good question, Glenn.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think if you don't have a little of both those sides, it'll be out of balance.
Yeah, I think it's like
right?
there's one thing when it comes to like I think what you're talking about is like as far as like having getting something out of the engagement, right? When you debate somebody or have a long discussion with somebody, it's sort of like you're able to learn interesting things, and you're able to broaden your horizons. You're able to like get something out of it in a way that is makes you feel like the time that you spent was worth it, right? Like you got the energy put in, and the amount that you got out of it was comparable. Like it was like the juice was worth the squeeze, right? Like that sort of thing. That's sort of like like you want to have that in any sort of like a discussion. And if you can't get that, then it's sort of like, well, it's hard for you to even stay in that discussion anymore and have patience for it, because you just see the same thing, or you just see like nothing really improving in any sort of way. And so it's like, well, this doesn't seem to be leading anywhere. Just so I feel like I need to just like take a break from this or whatever, or we need to step away from this, or whatever the case might be, right?
Definitely.
And yeah. And having a good partner, like it helps if you have somebody that's a good partner, and you're able to juggle the ideas together back and forth in a way where, again, like you're able to get enjoyment out of it, right? It's fun, it's interesting, and you're interested in what your partner has to say given that topic as well. When they present their idea, it's like, oh, I like the way that this person did this. Like they made a point which really sets my point up really well. It complements my point that I'm going to be making next, or it's sort of like like there's a balance there, right? So
yeah, even if they disagree, but if it's done from a person who's like a good seeker, you'll learn about your position more. For example, like I've heard so much religious argument in my life that now most of the time, vast majority of the time, I can almost finish their sentences for them. I mean, I've heard it all before. But
that's good for a good like comedic routine. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah.
But like Jordan Peterson did one where he was like kind of breaking down why he was a Christian, he thought it was important. Now after listening to that, I am still unmoved in my position, but I have more respect for the potential of strong spiritual progress experience using that model, seeing that he was able to do it that way. And it made me feel better about myself still, because he did a very good job of kind of checking off constellating spirituality and how religion works and so forth. So I followed along and did my own checks. I came to different answers than he did, but it was a good experience. He did a good canvassing of how one kind of weighs spiritual choices. And like I said, even though we didn't agree, that was good. We went through a nice weighing of important things together. You know what I mean? And that was worthwhile. I would do more of that while still disagreeing with them. But yeah, but this person has a mind who's really trying to figure things out, you know, important things on there, and is not scared to look at hard stuff. I like that, even if I don't agree with their conclusions. Yeah, to me, conclusions do count, definitely. That's like a similar thinking. But how you do your work, you know what I mean? How you actually arrive at things is also, I think, important. I think as important sometimes as the exact conclusions. And you have to also kind of take people, you know, part and parcel, which is like, say, Hitchens. I have a lot of admiration for him in general. And then specifically, there are lots of his positions that I agree with, and I like the way that he describes them. There are some that I don't.
Yeah.
There's some that takes.
Remember that rant video?
Yeah, I know, exactly. And I said,
Yeah,
and this he and I could be friends. And I would rant, and I'm sure he would rant on something I did that he think is off. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't agree, but that's your opinion. But I actually could still overall say I thought he was a heroic person that would be a cool friend to have. Because there's all these little things, ones and zeros, but there's like the big one. And to me, that is this person a real truth seeker? Do you know what I mean? And even all real truth seekers aren't going to get the same answers and everything. But that to me is a, because I was thinking, Mitch, when you said you couldn't think of a deal breaker, myself, it's funny because I'm open-minded. I'm really open-minded in general. But in certain things, I'm very closed-minded. I was like, what is that? That would be the one. If I smell that you're not really doing this for truth-seeking. Because if you are, then even if we disagree to the day we die, still it was productive. If you actually, it's like two scientists. If we're two scientists that disagree about the fabric of existence till the day we die, but we're both good scientists doing good scientific work, following good scientific principles, you're still going to have disagreement. As compared to, okay, that's not science. You know what I mean? Yes, but I do. Yeah, but that's not science. We have to agree that that's actually what is going on. After that, you know, hey, you're going to disagree even with your closest friends, your most admired mentor. That's just fine. As long as you can say, people say, like, for example, like, you like Hitchens, yes, but you totally disagree with them about that comedy and women thing. Yeah, but in totality, right? As a totality, I would actually say that's a truth-seeking hero, and I always like to have more truth-seeking hero friends in my life. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if he and I knew each other, we would agree on a lot of stuff, but we would be debating that one for some time.
Yeah, and I think also at the same time, like, I think there's also things that one can learn from the other person too. Mm-hmm. Like, they may point something out about you, which, or you know, it might be the other way around. You might point something about them, which they were not aware of, and they didn't realize that they were making a mistake in this particular area. But then having that perspective shared to them enables them to be like, oh, cool, I totally see what you're getting at. And instead of like me disagreeing with you, which can happen, it can also turn out the other way, in which is like, I'm glad you gave me that because now I can incorporate that in. Because we all have different perspectives. We all see different things in different ways. And some people see things that other people, for them, is a blind spot. And then when you share that information to to the other person, it can give them a boost. It can be like, oh wow, like that's actually really helpful. Like I'm glad you shared that with me because like now I can see my life moving forward in a much more better way than it was before. I didn't realize that that's what I needed. That's what I was actually trying to get, but you know, like that's what I really wanted. I just was having a hard time trying to be able to see what that was, and I'm glad that you pointed that out to me, because I can see that happening. Like, you know, like for me, sometimes I notice that sometimes that happens, and then like with you and Christopher Hitchens, the way that you're describing it, like you might see something about him, like he didn't realize that he was misbehaving in a particular interview or something. Then having you point that out can make him be like, oh wow, like that's actually really insightful.
And vice versa, sure.
Exactly. And I don't know, maybe your interpretation of what he said or whatever, given that previous rant or whatever, was that he actually knew what he was doing, he knew what he was saying, and he was actually firm on that, you know. Or maybe there might be a misunderstanding there, or I don't know. Like it really just depends on. I mean, I don't see things exactly clearly the same way that you see things, obviously, and then I don't know what Hitchen knows. I don't know what a lot of people know or don't know. So it's just sort of like it's helpful to kind of do that. And yeah, I mean, you kind of have to make the decision. 4951. Do I want to say this in a way which is going to be more adversarial, or do I want to be more friendly when I point this out as a as a blemish or a possible blind spot of this person? And you kind of just have to make the decision given that particular situation.
Right. Yeah, because you always have to speak truth on any topic as you see it. That's the right thing to do. But there's different tones that truth can take. And so, yeah, the kind of heroic quality of the person I'm referring to, that, for example, like if I was to talk to Jordan Peterson about my views on monotheism, I'm still going to say all the stuff you guys know me to believe in. I'm going to say my beliefs, but I would not state it to the way I would most monotheists. Most anyone are not putting as much thought into what they believe in and why as Jordan Peterson. That's fairly evident if you listen to him talk. So because of that, I would correspondingly put more thought and care into how I was saying it, and also respect. I would put more respect in what I was saying, even though I would still need to say the points I need to say. But I would give concessions of I'm going with the given that you're trying hard here, that you're coming from a good place. You've shown that track record. Oh, also something else, Glenn, you were kind of talking about how you can learn from each other or you can disagree, and those are true. There's actually a third one that happens a lot too, which is sometimes the difference is just interest. Like, for example, I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking to Dawkins, and they were talking about how they interact with crowds, how they interact with pushback, how they interact with, both agreed, stupidity. Stupidity. How do you deal with stupidity and stubborn stupidity? And they both agree that stupidity is bad, stubborn stupidity is worse, and there are certain things that have a high propensity to produce stubborn stupidity. So they agree on these three things, but they disagree on how you deal with it. Neil deGrasse Tyson's like, show them the beautiful story of science. Wow them with this story is even more magical than that story that isn't so true. And then Dawkins is like, I see that, but I come forward because I think that there's a need to confront certain things that they're not confronted, they will continually soil the environment. At the end, I think, I don't know how he said it, but I think they kind of did it just sort of like, you know, unspoken in a way. Or maybe they did say it, I don't remember well enough. But basically, I think both fights need to happen. There needs to be like, you know, Bardic, Neil deGrasse Tyson over there making science sound sexy and smooth, like, you know, making like, ooh, tell me about science. But then you also need to have like ridiculously stubborn, stupid people in positions of authority be told by Dawkins, you're a fool. How dare you? Because you're wrong. How do you know that? Because this, and this. Ah, you can't say that. Yes, I can, and you're still stupid. You know what I mean? Someone needs to do that too. So it isn't like, sometimes it can seem like our two jobs at moving a cause forward seem so different. One of us must be wrong or something. But actually, sometimes no. There's just so much to be done. There's quite a lot of arcs on how to do it. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson, we need him. Dawkins, we need him. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's like an either or. If Dawkins did it like Neil deGrasse Tyson did, and you had two of them, I think there would be an imbalance. If there was not Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was doing like double Dawkins, I think that would be in balance. I think the double barrels is actually better. It shows more of the advantage of a way of thinking. They both share, but their way of pushing in the world quite different.
No, that's a really good point too. Because if you think about it, it kind of like even within the 16 different mojos, right? Each mojo has its own kind of like specialization. But even among the same mojo, there's all these different ways in which they can branch off and do their own mojo, their own specific, personal kind of way. I think that's what you're kind of getting at there, right? This is specifically like in the bubble of atheism or like science, but they're approaching it in the same kind of way.
Yeah, I'm saying two things. What you're saying, you're talking about there's lots of rifts. I'm like, yes, and I'm kind of lining that up also with these rifts that do splay out as they need to, that the various causes in the world, they require that. The causes have, if it's a big cause, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of heroic pushes that are required to get that to go forward as it should.
Yeah, so, like in a business,
so it works out nicely in nature in that pushes required a lot of different rifts of hero, and humanity, the quality of phenomenon happens to do it. That there's lots of specialist instruments that also then further specialize with rifts.
Yeah. I mean, with Neil deGrasse Tyson and Richard Dawkins, it's really like they're very similar in a lot of ways. They're both, Naiji. They're both in the same bubble.
Well, just they're pending. They're pending, but yeah, they're both scientists.
They are.
Okay, they're pending. All right, but yeah, like
I actually didn't know that Neil deGrasse was pending. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I pulled him, Dawkins, and Sagan because of Hitchens. Because I pulled Hitchens, I believe is a Z9, and I was able to see that, and that made me reconsider a few things. And so there's several cases I'm like, I need to relook at you and you and you.
Yeah, but it's good to do, I think.
Yeah, but going back to what you were saying, Glenn, is that the sharing. Yeah, they're both scientists. They're both public atheists. They both do debates a lot. I mean, so they are quite similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but they've chosen to kind of like go at it in different ways, right? And that's needed. You can't just have just one particular person kind of like cloning themselves and just making all these different people doing the exact same thing. It just would be not very productive at all. So there needs to be several different perspectives, several different people, all with their own unique kind of talents and perspectives and like ways of looking at things in order to sort of like expand things out like that.
Definitely. If Social Alchemy shows anything, and riffing even beyond that, it's that it's extremely powerful, I'd say apex powerful, to actually have a coordinated, posse of specialists. That seems to be any species, any group that can actually, any cause that can actually have a lot of different specialized people all pushing. Like making a movie, making a political party, anything like that's big, you need a lot of specialists working in concert.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
I don't want to take up too much time. I want to let you guys talk as well.
Yeah, Ben Mitchell, do you have anything to chime in?
Not in particular, but
okay. If you do, just let me know. If not, then I'll just kind of say what we should do maybe next time.
Okay, cool.
Let's plan on next time bringing your outlines more fleshed out, that arc, and let's see if you can kind of talk through the story of you very loosely, but try to bring an arc outline where you can kind of say, so I'm going to say this, which will lead me to this, I'm going to say this, and kind of like what you did today, but a little
with more beats, right?
With more beats and a little more sure-footedness, but just a little bit more. Does that sound good?
Sure thing, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so try tease it out a little bit, and I would try to at least, if you don't say it out loud, at least in your head, try and think out how you would sort of say this. You know what I mean?
Just kind of like put more work on it, right? Like it's kind of like this kind of like massive art, we're just kind of giving it more and more shape and more form and trying to see what is this that I'm trying to like say
Exactly.
really, you know. So I think it's just a matter of like how much time you spend on it, like actively trying to understand what it is that's on the paper there, and then coming up with a product that you can present that's going to be more and more just that much more beautiful and describes what it is that you're trying to get across as effectively as possible. So yeah,
Perfect. Okay, so next time that will be the plan as best you guys can. So I'll let the pace of this be up to you because this is new. We haven't done this before, and particularly the beginning part, as you kind of like figure it out, the time frame that it is what it is. So just put some thought on it, think about it, and imagine kind of giving us a tour, a little more fleshed out tour next time, and that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and I know that we haven't done this before, but I know that you have, Coach. So then you can also, continue to give us more ideas as far as like how it kind of worked for you.
Right.
And then, yeah, obviously because that's what we're getting the help from you.
No, I appreciate no, but you're right. It's a balance because I have an idea of what needs to be constructed so it is successful as a ritual for you. At the same time, it needs to be you, and so that's what we want. We want to get you out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I could totally see how it could be like, well, you need to say exactly what I think that you need to say. It's like, well, then I'm just saying what you want to say.
But everybody knows that's why I've been trying to go on the other side, like trying to be really hands off. While I do want to give you some guys guidance, but I'm trying to balance between giving guidance but not leading you, so to speak.
I know it's totally fine.
All right, cool beans. But we'll keep learning together. All right, guys. I will see you then on Tuesday. No, Thursday. I'll see you on Thursday. All right. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good stuff.